What's going on, y'all? Back with another late night banger. I like coming here, or just I like going out and about at night to record content, just because uh, there's less people around. So it makes it easier for me to think. I have less stimulation to worry about, or less things that will probably flood my consciousness while I'm trying to think. It's just better when you're alone. I've always known that. That's why I'm somebody that's more prone to be introverted than I am extroverted. I don't know. I mean, I've always been an ambivert, but I'm prone to be more introverted at times, just because I like to be alone. I like being able to express myself freely without the worry of other people. But anyways, enough about me. Tonight I wanted to get on a bit about schizophrenia, as I've actually dealt with it myself and I've been able to escape. And so I basically want to talk about like my experience with it and how it happened to me, how it could happen to you, because there's definitely many ways it can happen. Mine was more because of a coercive thing, so it's because of other people. But it could happen on your own if you're not careful, if you don't know how your thinking can make you fall victim to experiencing the void without knowing how to traverse it, right? And I'll get a bit on that too. But basically, I'm gonna go ahead and describe like what it is, how you get into it, and how you can escape or deprogram from it. Because it's not really something that you want to be in long term. I think it stems from derealization. And if you know what that is, that's basically like having your reality torn from you at a moment's notice, and then you questioning everything because you don't really have a clinging to truth or like deep understanding. So it's hard for you to see what's going on in your reality for what it is. So you start questioning. Nihilism could be an issue here, but you derealize to the point where you don't know if life is real or not anymore, if you think it's a reality or a video game. And when you get stuck in there, it's hard to think, it's hard to operate. You actually look like a psychopath to other people. You look like you're insane, whether that's true or not. And I've seen it firsthand. When you look at some of these homeless people or some of these people in mental hospitals, the way they act like so erratic and self-talking sometimes is because they've derealized and haven't been able to escape, or they're deep into the void and don't necessarily know how to traverse. So it looks like they're insane because they speak freely, like off desire, right? Their desire to express themselves is natural. So when they want to speak, it's usually to themselves, but they don't administer that they're around other people because their consciousness has them thinking that nobody else is around, or nobody else matters, or they're fake, or they're not real, or some sort of bullshit, right? And so they feel like they can just express themselves openly even around people. But if you don't harness yourself or ground yourself in reality, it'll make you look like you're crazy when you do that. Personally, I know that that's not the case for most people. If you're somebody who has derealized and you start talking to yourself more often, right, or just in general and open in public, and you don't really administer that you're around people sometimes, like you just so happen to start talking and then you don't realize that people are around you and you're talking, and you go on for like a long time, people will think you're crazy. I know you're not, right? There's definitely smarter people who know you're not crazy. That's why I'm somebody who likes to acknowledge, because acknowledgement goes a long way. And part of the reason that you can get stuck in there easy is because we have a silent culture of, if it's not my business, I'm not gonna get into it, right? And then we're very like closed off in public spaces. So like trains and buses, or like even in churches or third spaces where you have to go constantly, like grocery stores or something, people are not really very open and forthcoming, not very approachable. And they've normalized that behavior because there's a level of danger with trying to express yourself too openly with people, because now we're allowing manipulation and coercion and narcissists to walk amongst us. So it's like you don't know who could be who, and you want to be protective of yourself. So we just normalize, okay, we're just not going to talk to each other because it's dangerous. I don't know this person, so I'm just not going to speak to them, right? And that's how everybody operates. But if you're somebody who doesn't have a clinging to understanding or truth of yourself or of reality, and you go out into the open and out in the world and try to express yourself, and then you're either disregarded, or what you're saying is not enlightened or not like acknowledged, and then this happens over and over, say for like months, weeks, years of you not getting acknowledged. And there's definitely stupid arbitrary reasons as to why that happens. Maybe people just think you're unattractive or something, or maybe they just don't like the way you talk, the way you look, the way you walk, the way you dress, some bullshit to demonize you, but to otherize you basically, so they can justify that. People are kind of evil that way, bro. But anyway, so the schizophrenic pathway from there is, you start as somebody that doesn't really have a very deep understanding of reality, and then you haven't really learned too much about mental health or about like intuition, and you haven't really harnessed it, right? So say you're like the typical school student who fucks around too much, and you haven't really tried to like actually learn things. So your knowledge is more based on fleeting stuff. So when you think, you probably don't have, you probably don't retain information too long. Like you're more prone to listening for a quick moment, and then you forget, and then that tells you like, okay, I just got to go back to it again, and then I'll try it again. Maybe I'll remember it if I keep doing the repetitions, right? So it may take a longer time for you to retain information outside of somebody who actually does try to harness their memory a bit more, right? Which is why memory is going to be a big talk when I'm, or a point when I'm bringing up the schizophrenia. But basically, if you haven't harnessed it or gotten it to a point where you can remember things much easier, it'll be harder for you to retain information. So then when you go out and about in the world as an adult, or when you get older, and people are so selfish and so self-centered, and they don't want to help you try to understand, right? Or at least give you a better understanding, or clinging to intuition, or at least bring their opinion and acknowledge what you're saying, and then relay it back and give their voice, right? If you don't have that kind of stuff, if your support system is very like negligible, or you don't have one, or if you're somebody who if you don't even have a support system at all, you don't really have friends, or you don't really have anything to help you understand what's going on outside of yourself, it's easier for you to probably derealize and then eventually become schizophrenic by not understanding what's going on. So my suggestion, if that is you, is to at least try to express yourself to people, or like be in third spaces and try to do that. Because some people just don't care. They don't give a fuck. Like they'll let you like sit there and derealize and just never find out. And they like to enjoy watching that stuff. They're really sadistic, most people. So you gotta be careful. But if you know what's going on to a degree, and you have some clinging to understanding, or at least you know how to protect your mind to a degree, you might have some ability to traverse it without derealizing to the point of schizophrenia. Me personally, I did have a very well-entrenched understanding of intuition, and like the ability to think for myself without having to necessarily need somebody else. But my support system was actually bad, and I didn't know that when I was younger. So they were watching me, right? Specifically, they were watching if I knew certain things, or like where my thinking was coming from. They patternized it. They cooperated with one another, because they basically wanted me to suffer at their hands, right? They wanted me to be having to deal with what they were trying to do. So basically, it allowed them to see what was going on in my reality, and then they figured out a way to see if they can mess it up somehow, right? Or discombobulate it. And that's kind of what people do when you have like a bad support system, or like when the people around you don't really care for you. They could leave you in a position to where you don't know what to think anymore, because they know that you rely on them to a degree, and they try to quantify their reliance, like what exactly it is that you need them for, and then they gaslight, or at least figure out what you need them for and reroute that information to get you into a more isolated position, so that way they can probably harm you a bit further. This is why it's kind of dangerous to be introverted if you're not very intelligent, and it's also dangerous to allow yourself to be isolated if you don't know how to think for yourself. Okay? So, like I said, if you're somebody who is likely not trying to harness your memory, or at least be a bit more memorable, and try to be somebody who's always a learner, or wants to maintain a higher sense of to keep your attention span healthy, because it is dangerous to not have it healthy and not know what you're doing. But if you're somebody who's like not very wary of what people would likely do to your mind if you're not careful, especially if you have a bad support system, you can be somebody who eventually gets derealized, and then schizophrenia can take over your reality, and you could get stuck if you don't know what's happening. So what does that look like? What does schizophrenia look like if you're in that position? Basically, you question everything. After you derealize, and you derealize for a long time, you start to question everything. And then if you solidify in your mind that you don't know what the hell is going on anymore, like you don't know if it's real, you don't know if you're real, you don't know if what you're seeing is real, you don't know if it's a projection, a simulation, you don't know if people are lying to you or not, you don't know if they're real or not, you don't know if they're playing into the game or not, you don't know if random people know what's going on with you, you don't know if you're in like a Truman Show projection, you don't know if you're Truman, you don't know if you're an NPC, that kind of stuff. If you don't know anything, then you can be, that likely looks like schizophrenia for you personally. You have to be careful about that. So if you're constantly questioning everything in your reality, and then you feel like nobody hears you, nobody listens to you, and then when you actually try to express yourself and you're disregarded constantly, there's likely other factors. But if you don't know that, you become schizophrenic. If you don't know that, that's why it's better to learn like what's going on, and or like why people are doing what they're doing, right? You have to know like what it is or how people operate in order to avoid getting in that position, because you'll never know, right? You'll never know if it's because of other people, or if it's because of you, or if it's because of your support system, or if it's something systemic. If you can't understand what your place is, or like what you represent, or how you represent yourself in the area that you are, you can become schizophrenic. So let's say you're somebody who got in there, and you're somebody who's always questioning. How do you escape? First thing you want to do is go ahead and accept the isolation, because that's the only way that you're even in that position. Accept the isolation for what it is. Accept that you no longer can trust the people around you. Accept that there is nobody else that's going to help you except you for right now. Right? That's the best thing to do. Accept that it's just you right now. The only understanding that you need is you. You only need to trust yourself, nobody else. So after you do that, then you start questioning, okay, my support system. Who in my support system do I know that I can trust? If you discern that it's nobody, it's likely that your support system is the one that got you to be schizophrenic in the first place. If it's not that, if you can still trust somebody, then, you know, have conversation with them, but still think for yourself and think, okay, at the end of the day, I probably can't trust this person just because of what's happening. So I'm gonna have to still rely on my own self, my own intuition, even if I can trust that person for right now. And then you start questioning more. Okay, so say you got somebody you could trust. Okay, now you need to start asking other people, like, you need to start asking people about like just specific things, like have normal conversation, ask them if they know anything about the situation, or if they know your family members, or if they know you, or if they know anything. And if you're getting the runaround, if you're getting specific things that are not very like understandable, if it seems like they're trying not to say much, or they act like they don't know what's going on, but it seems like they're not very like open, then there's likely a bigger plot going on around you, right? Usually this stuff happens to people who have talents or skills, If you're somebody who's like, if you have a very great energy around you, if you have an aura that people like, if you are attractive, if you have talent and skills or creativity, if you're somebody who's very like forthcoming and people like how empathetic you are, or like just you're somebody that's a good person, you can have a bigger plot on you to become derealized outside of your support system. But it depends if your support system is in on it or not, right? This kind of stuff is the basis to gang stalking or just organized harassment and stalking. It's the base format to fusion center and fusion center liaison work. People who get paid to watch you to see if they can tell what's going on in your reality. It's also the base to the surveillance culture of this system, the Orwellian system. They watch everything you do, and if they got to the point where they can fully categorize who you are and know your thoughts and your emotions and how you operate, they're gonna try to have dominion over your life. It's because the system is narcissistic, and people align with that because it's easier to live that way. And so, people are kind of evil. So what happens is they allow you to be further entrenched into an isolated position in order to get you derealized and then schizophrenic, and then label you crazy and try to justify throwing you in a jail or a mental health facility, or probably trying to unalive you. Unfair, but this is what happens if you decide you don't want to try to be more intelligent. Okay, you gotta want to learn, because people are fucked up. They are disgusting, evil cretins, gremlins. They only care about themselves. They will let you burn for some money. They will let you burn for a hot Cheeto bag with their bitch ass. I swear to God. So don't think that it won't happen to you. People are really self-centered and selfish. Okay, so that's the plots to get you schizophrenic if you have skills or talents and you have a support system and you're probably introverted. Now, if say you're somebody who's extroverted and your support system is a bit more vast and they enlighten you all the time, like they basically accept who you are, and you're very like, you have a good understanding of intuition, and you're able to be forthcoming with them and defend yourself, right? Specifically through conversation or through rerouting or through backdooring and whatnot, right? But how can you still become schizophrenic in that position? So I would think there's specific intelligence formats that you need in order to avoid it, but not everybody has them, because not everybody knows everything that you need in order to be more autonomous for yourself or to be a better self-thinker. So you could be somebody who has a very good standing in society, but you're probably superficial, or you're conceited, or you think about yourself too much and you put yourself over others. And so that isolates you as well, right? When you think that you're better than people and you live that way to the highest degree. And I don't say that's too bad, because you definitely want to think highly of yourself, especially when other people are just disgusting and would lie to you to make you doubt yourself. But you don't want to let that erode your sense of character or erode your ability to gain influence from other people, right? So let's say that you are extroverted and you're very conceited or you're very arrogant, and it isolated you, right? To the point where now nobody wants to talk with you much, or they see you as thinking that you're too uppity, and envy allows them to further push you away into a way that you would be more isolated as a result of thinking you're better than people, right? A bit of the humbling culture people like to do here, some bullshit. But anyways, that can get you isolated as well. And then if you don't, like I said, if you don't have the intelligence to understand your reality much, and you derealize after a long time of being isolated, you could become schizophrenic that way as well. And then if they figure that out, they will play on that mentality that you have and try to keep you that way until it brings you down to reality to humble you, because people really feel like they have to humble you if you ever are arrogant or conceited. Now, I don't know if that's justifiable, because sometimes you do need to be humbled if you're really that arrogant, but it's never justifiable to try to harm somebody just because they think a certain way, right? Unless their thinking is they want to try to kill somebody or harm somebody, then okay, maybe there is some justification to trying to humble somebody, but usually that's not the case. People want to live in peace, so I doubt people just want to kill people just because, right? Nobody's just some random psychological murderer just because they want to be. But anyways, you can get isolated that way, and that can get you schizophrenic, or that can get you to derealize. So you got to be careful in both situations because they're both dangerous. This is kind of why I emphasize being an ambivert if you can, because you learn in the introverted pathway, you learn how to be isolated, which allows you more time to think for yourself and further your intuition. And then it's easier for you to understand your reality, your place, and what you represent, what you look like to other people in society, basically. So when you've done that for a while, and then you go back to try to speak to people again, be more extroverted, and then you learn how to to make this method straightforward and like plan it out, right? And just to keep being able to do that, to be isolated and then speak to people and then be isolated again, that allows you you'll basically become an ambivert after that. And then it's easier for you to do both. So then you're much harder to be manipulated that way as well, because you know how to operate both and you have a better understanding of reality. So derealizing is not something that passes you by as an issue. You'll realize certain things if you're in certain positions much easier than somebody who probably doesn't do that, right? I don't know if I said that too discombobulated. My speech sometimes is messed up. I honestly, I'm very introverted. So sometimes, I go long times without really talking to people. And, I like to have discussions and whatnot, but some people just are not like on the same frequency as me. So sometimes I just end up just, thinking to myself or just speaking with very few people who understand. But usually I don't even try to do that. I just think for myself, and then maybe I'll learn something from somebody online, who knows, or then maybe I can bring that information back to somebody else. Maybe I'll have a random conversation with somebody somewhere. I don't know. I get mine when I want, but I probably should be a bit more extroverted, especially now, because I started making this content because I wanted to bring in my perspective, but I also wanted to help people understand what it would be like if you go from introvert to extrovert, and say you've been an introvert for a while and then happen to reintegrate yourself back into society as an extrovert, or to be more extroverted. I like to bring in my perspective there because I'm personally going through that at the same time, right? So me doing this is also me reintegrating at the same time. And it always varies, right? When I was younger, I was definitely much more extroverted, but then I went introverted because my support system was garbage. So then I was there for like a good while and I had very few friends, but I learned a whole lot in those times. And I also got some talents and creative ability. So it was definitely worthwhile to do all those experiences, but now I'm reintegrating back to be more extroverted again as a result of learning things and hearing perspectives from people online, as well as having a conversation from random people after having to remove my bad support system. But anyways, because of that, basically, because I had to go from extrovert to introvert, and then my support system knew that, they got me to be a little bit schizophrenic for a while. It was not a long time. I would say from around 2023 to the beginning of 2025, I could have been somewhat schizophrenic, but not too bad. And then around January is when it's worse. Like, I was being gaslit, and then I think I had my social media hacked. I can't really say that is what happened for sure, but I know like the profiles that I was being given were very specific to make me derealize and be schizophrenic. So, and it's also because I had to learn spirituality at the beginning of 2025 as well. So that stuff all in one basically got me to be in like a spiritual psychosis that I got out of. But then as soon as I got out of that, I still had layers of schizophrenia, and I had to fix that as well. So I fixed it all. I'm fully back into reality as a result. I'm so glad to be. I thank God for it. I thank my ability to learn from being introverted allowed me to want to do that, because I don't know, like, I probably could have been still schizophrenic to this day if I didn't know what was going on. I'm so glad that I could at least understand, right? I have a very, very good ability to understand things, and that's what allowed me to even begin breaking down the schizophrenic layers and the psychosis layers. So, and I did it all in isolation. I didn't have very much help at all. I don't think I had anybody to help me, except for my support system trying to make it worse. But that also, because of that also made me realize things as well. And I also learned about like the systemic way that this can get you there as well, right? Because of the gang stalking and stuff, and because of the organized harassment. But anyways, so that's basically what I wanted to get on. A bit about myself, but a bit about how if you had the same situation or the same symptoms, how it might be schizophrenia if you don't know what's going on, and how you can get out of that. You definitely don't want to stay there, okay? Some people never get out, and everybody will gaslight them when they're in that position, because society does not want to help people. Most people just don't give a fuck. If you are out and about and say you look like somebody who is in psychosis or is schizophrenic, and you talk to yourself out loud in public, they'll think you're crazy. If that happens enough times, they will tell other people that you're crazy and to stay away from you. If you don't know that that's happening, you'll think that you're actually crazy and embody it. And that internalization is how it gets stuck. And that's how that could get you homeless and eventually go insane to the point where you don't know what to do anymore. And you could harm somebody if you consistently get gaslit that way. I've seen it happen. This is why, like, at certain points in my life, I related very well with homeless people, because they've been in similar situations. Usually these are like very intelligent minds who get harmed because of their support systems or because of the system itself. And they didn't have a very good understanding of how to get out. Right? Not everybody's situation is the same. Some get it worse than others. It's not a fair system at all. It's very racist even. But if you at least want to learn, you can defend yourself. And if there's any one thing, any one valuable trait to have, it's the knack to learn, the want to learn, and embodying it all, honestly and authentically. If that's you, you are definitely somebody very difficult to harm, because most people don't do that. Most people cheat. Most people go the easy route. Most people are codependent and rely on each other for their information, and don't think for themselves necessarily as strong or as well as somebody who's been introverted or isolated for a while. But that's basically what I wanted to get on. I hope I taught you guys something. I like teaching. Personally, if I could change the circumstances, I probably would be a teacher in life, just because it's natural for me to do it. But I don't think that's a very good route anymore, because teachers are not supported and they actually are attacked from what I've noticed, especially if you're a real authentic teacher with a great deal of knowledge. I've learned from professors that they don't give a damn about you. They really expect you to do all of the work to teach. They don't give you a curriculum. You do it all yourself because they know you can, but it's just they don't want to help you because they're jealous or envious. Some bullshit, man. But if we were more cooperative, this stuff wouldn't even be an issue. Obviously, we're not cooperative, so it's an issue. Anyways, that's all I wanted to get on. Hope you guys have a great night. Hope you learned something. Hope you teach your friends, if not, because I don't want anybody to have to deal with this. It's a danger. It's how you get homeless. It's how you get seen as crazy and further homeless. And it's how you could endanger yourself or other people if you don't know what's going on. So, hope you guys have a great night and peace out.